So I want to take you to our front yard to show you how we incorporated the rain garden concept along with the swale concept. The idea, of course, in permaculture is to slow water down. And so we one of our design courses a couple of years ago, we had the students, they had the choice to sit in the classroom and listen to us talk, or to come outside and dig these rain gardens with us. And so I would say we probably didn't spend more than 4 or 5 hours total over 3 days digging all these rain gardens and building the berm. So it was a really fun project. The students had a great time. But it's really a simple design. Our front yard was basically plain. There was nothing in our yard except for this little small little redbud tree. You can kind of see it there in the front. And what we did is we blocked the rain gutter on the far end of the downspout on the far end of the house. You can see it on our house there, which would force all the water to come into on the right-hand side. You can't see it in the picture, but the downspout on the right-hand side of the house. So now all the water from 2/3 of our roof comes down this one downspout. We connected it to it's really just a ditch. A swale is more of a ditch on contour. This is more of just a clean ditch. And the water comes down to fills rain garden number 1 on the right, works its way down along the sidewalk, fills up rain garden number 2, and then there's another little path that leads to a rain garden number 3. You can't see the rain garden, but it's just beyond rain garden number 2. And then when rain garden number 3 overflows, you can see the berm along the back, the black stretch of dirt there right along between our 2 properties there. We took all the dirt, put it along that berm, so the water overflows, it hits that berm, and then it starts working its way down the berm back towards the back of the house, all the while soaking up water in all 3 rain gardens and the berm, and we are holding the water on the landscape. Actually, it's been a couple of years now, and I've never seen a rain event. We've had 5 inches of rain, 7 inches of rain in less than, I think it was 14 hours once, and we had a lot of water, but none of it, it didn't make it all the way down to the end of the berm. We have soaked in thousands of gallons of water in those rain events. So if you look at that picture, slide 64, that was actually Thanksgiving Day, and the next picture shows that that's probably June, maybe July, the following year. We put in a path system. The paths are really nice. It was very simple. We dug out the sod and we moved it in the backyard. We've got a berm back there, but we filled it with wood chips. It's really nice how it gave it a sense of tranquility. It started dividing up our yard into different areas, so now we have this part over here, this part over there, and it really, I think it's beautiful. I never spent any time in our front yard except to mow it. Maybe when the boys were small, I'd be out there, we'd play ball or something, but it's just open, it's sunny, it's uninteresting. But now, once we put these rain gardens in, we started planting. We have, Becky and I have counted, we've got about 40 edible items in our front yard now, and everything is still young. We're not going to live off of these little teeny blueberry bushes in the front, but over a period of 5 years, this will become a very bountiful area. We'll be producing lots of food. And I love being in our front yard now. The next picture shows the berm. This is when we were building it. We just dumped all the soil in a big long row right down the property line, and then the next slide just shows it to you the next summer. On that berm, we've got gooseberries, currants, raspberries, strawberry, onion, green beans, white clover, and comfrey. This year we've added, what do we got there now, Beck? We got some cabbage in there, some collard greens. I think we've got a whole row of potatoes, and the daylilies are in there too. So we're eating all of those things. Backyard, this is the water tank. We started with a 55-gallon drum, but those of you you've captured roof water in a 55-gallon drum, in a good rain event, you know that they fill in about 2 minutes. So I went out and bought this. This actually, if you could see the cutouts on the side of this water tank here, it fits into the back of a pickup truck. So they make them by the bazillions, so it's relatively cheap. This whole tank cost me $220, and it holds 425 gallons. So that's roughly the equivalent of 8 55-gallon drums, and it's all in one big container. And then Becky and I went ahead and built this little structure to get it up off the ground. It's just a little bit below the gutter level. You know, the top of the tank is just 2 inches below the gutter level. That's how we decided how high it should be, so water will flow downhill. And then from there, when that thing fills up and you throw the valve, this water comes crashing out of it. So it makes it very easy to do watering. And we'll talk about this a little bit more during your course. I'll get into more detail. But now we've got lath on the side. We're going to be planting grapes and kiwi, so it'll be a structure to hold, to grow food. Becky started growing some mushrooms underneath as well because it's a cool, dark, shaded area. So we'll maximize, what we use. We'll stack functions. This picture here is of one of the evergreens we have in our backyard. We have 3 trees, and they've kind of grown up. They're kind of a wind protection, but they've gotten so big they're blocking out a lot of sunlight. We wanted to do some annual agriculture in this one bed here, so we decided we'd take the middle tree out. And so rather than cut the tree down and then try to cut all the limbs off to store the carbon, we always save all the branches, all the branches and leaves, anything that comes off of our lot, we save and we turn it back into soil. But I went ahead and cut the branches off while it's standing vertical. It's a little easier to lop them off standing up than laying down. And I got as high as I could reach, and then I went in to get the saw to cut it down at the base. And Becky's standing out there when I come out. She says, "You know what? I kind of like that the way it is." She says, "It reminds me of a Dr. Seuss tree. I think it's kind of cute. Why don't we leave the post in the ground right where it is instead of burying a post and creating a structure to tie some string on for our vining plants? We can just leave it as a living post. We don't have to replace the post every 7 to 8 years. We can just leave the tree as alive, and that way it's a living post, and we don't have to replace the post." So we decided that we'd plant our beans, and we, put up tied up some twine for them to grow on, and away they go. But we must have been gone we were probably doing a design course, the week that they reached the top of the string, because there was nobody there to tell them, okay, you're there, you're done, go ahead and stop, you're at the top. So they just kept on growing, and if you look at the next slide, they ended up growing through the entire top of the tree and coming out the top. We had this beautiful crop of beans growing at the top of this evergreen tree at about 14 feet. I had to get the ladder out to harvest the beans, and they were delicious beans. But this is just a reminder. I mean, how many of us have vertical landscaping that doesn't produce food, but we can convert it into food production just by what we grow next to it. These great big leaves you see on these bean plants, the bean plant, the vining bean plant, is not a desert plant. It's not a prairie plant. It's a forest plant. We call them leaves, but they're actually great big solar collectors. And at any given time, maybe only 25% of the leaves are in sunlight. But that's all that the plant needs in order to produce a very healthy crop of beans. If you look at the next picture, another understory vining plant is the squash plants. And in front of this evergreen, we had I think it was a volunteer butternut squash, and we had the vine must have been 20 feet. It was growing out into the yard. But one of the vines got away from us, went behind this tree, went up through the base of the tree, and we didn't even notice it. And I come around the back of the tree later on in the summer, and here's this butternut vine squash growing through the side of the tree. So I went ahead and I pulled back the branches. And look at slide number 7.2. Look at what I found. That's an 8-inch butternut squash, 8 or 9-inch butternut squash, growing at about 6 feet off the ground. How many of you have a butternut squash tree sitting in your backyard? You didn't even know it. The next slide, 73, is a picture of our peach tree. That's Becky. We probably got, 300 or 400 peaches off of this one tree. Now, listen, peaches are difficult to grow, and, we haven't had great success. This was the big year. We planted the tree, and, nothing for a couple of years, and then we got 3 peaches, and then 12, and then 24, and then this year. That is the way nature works. If I was a peach farmer, and I was dependent upon every tree to do this every year, and I had one bad year, I'd be out of business. But if you're a permaculturist, you have 20, 15, 20, maybe 30 varieties of fruit trees in your own backyard, and some trees have 2 or 3 different varieties grafted onto the same tree. You've got quite a variety, and so if 2 or 3 or 5 trees have a bad year, so what? You have so many other trees that are doing so well. You have plenty of food, plenty of bounty. I think we preserved enough peach preserves and frozen peaches and for pies and stuff that lasted us into about almost a year and a half.